Welcome back, everybody, to my channel and to another video. Today I'm talking about It Chapter 2. If you haven't seen my review, you can click somewhere, I don't know where I'm going to put it, and watch it. But I also have a special guest, my friend Jasmynn, or Art by Jasmynn.
Hello.
You should follow her, she makes great art. And so we're going to talk about It Chapter 2. I'm talking full spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, click away right now. Like right now, I can give you a chance. Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Going full spoilers. Wow, I can't believe Pennywise shrunk down and went up Thanos' butt. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh, we thought it was going to be Ant-Man this whole time, but it was Pennywise.
All right, but for real though, if you haven't seen the movie, click away right now. Okay, so we kind of just both have notes again. It's not super professional. We're just going to go with it. First thing I want to talk about is the Birds of Prey teaser, which kind of caught me off guard because I think I remember hearing that it was going to be in this movie, but for some reason I just forgot. And then when it happened, I was really confused because the way they did it, I don't know if that threw you off, but it was like the It balloon, like, okay, the movie's about to start. But then it said DC Comics. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not DC thing, is it? And so like I doubted it for a second, and then Margot Robbie showed up, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's what this is. And then they showed the teaser, and I was like, okay. And it kind of happened really fast. I don't really remember everything about it, and maybe that's why people aren't talking about it, because they showed so much so fast that you can't really talk about it, and maybe because of spoilers. So I'm going to guess they're going to release it online at some point, if they haven't already. Maybe by the time that I actually release this, it might be online. People will actually be talking about it, but I don't know. Did that bother you?
I really didn't know anything about it, so
Okay.
I'll let you keep talking about the topic.
All right. Well, now we're just going to, because this is not about DC Comics. This is about It the Clown, so we're just going to skip that part. All right. First thing that I think we both were kind of iffy about was how they talked about Richies' sexuality, because it didn't seem like they addressed it in previous movies, or in the previous movie.
I remember watching it and wishing that they had had more of a build-up towards Richie's feelings towards Eddie. Like, I feel like, you know, their banter was sort of like, oh, making fun of each other, making fun of each other's moms, but I kind of wish it was maybe more, like, flirtatious on Richie's side, maybe. Like, if after Richie made, like, a your mom joke, Eddie's just like, oh, yeah, haha, whatever, and then you just maybe see, like, a moment where Richie's, like, maybe looking at him lovingly or something. I wish that there was more of a build-up towards it. That way, towards the moment when Eddie dies, you know, Richie has this big heartbreaking moment, and that was a moment where I was like, wait a minute, like, did Richie, like, love Eddie this whole time? I wish that I had more of, like, oh my gosh, like, he's dead, there's no chance of them being together anymore, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, especially when they were in the kids part in Chapter 1, I don't remember seeing any hint of Richie being gay. At least I remember. Maybe I have to go back and watch it and it's there somewhere, but I don't remember that. Maybe it's in the book, too. Neither of us have read the book, so again, if you want to yell at us in the comments for not knowing about the book, I mean, you can, but we didn't read it. It's really long. So I guess maybe it is in the book, or maybe it's somewhere else that we didn't notice it, but as far as we know, I don't think they actually hinted at, so I think, again, it would have made more of an impact on Eddie's death, knowing that.
Yeah.
Because all we saw really in this movie was a flashback of Richie hitting on another guy who didn't show up again at all, or I don't think was even mentioned earlier. He kind of just came out of nowhere, and it was apparently related to Henry Bowers. I think it was like his cousin or something.
Yeah, the bad guy's cousin.
Yeah, so besides that, there's no other hint of him actually being gay. So I guess, yeah, like Jasmynn said, they should have just been more specific with that, or given more hints towards that.
Yeah.
All right. Next thing I want to talk about is just the violence of this movie. Like, everybody, like I said in my review, everybody was getting chomped up. Like, and the thing was, it wasn't just Pennywise. It was like the very brutal scene in the beginning of these two gay men getting attacked. And I guess that kind of leads, or kind of branches off of seeing how weird and twisted the adults were in this town because of either because of Pennywise influence or just because they're messed up. They didn't really specify whether it was Pennywise causing that to happen or if it was just people in the town were messed up. But that scene really was like, wow, that's crazy. And then they just threw him over a bridge after they beat up that one guy up. Like, what? That's overboard.
So wait, are you saying that you think that it was too violent?
Oh, no, I don't think it was too violent. I just mean it just caught me off guard. I mean, but also I think it works to show that Pennywise was going after anybody and everybody. It didn't, because at first you see him save the guy from, well, save the guy from save because like he didn't actually save him. He just wanted to eat him. But at first, like, oh, okay, he's gonna help this guy, but then, you know, of course he just chomps into him and he's done. But it was still like, wow, this movie is... I mean, I felt the same way in the beginning of the last one, because, again, I didn't really read the books or anything, so I didn't know Georgie's arm was going to get, like, chomped off. Like, it caught me off guard, too, but this one, I think it was really, like, this is serious, because he's not just going after kids now, he's also going after adults. Because I don't think he was as much in the first one. I think it was mostly kids he was going after.
Yeah. So
that part, that one caught me off guard, but I thought it worked well to establish how crazy things were going to get in this one. And then the ending sucks joke, where constantly, because in this movie, Bill is a movie writer, I think, or just a writer in general, so he writes movies and books. Screenwriter. And people keep telling him that they love his stuff, but the endings suck, and I think this was an obvious jab at Stephen King.
I think that joke was so well done in this movie. I personally think that it's funny that they did that, because they're making a poke at, like, you know, when Stephen King wrote the book and stuff like that, and that's what he got a lot, like, oh, it was a really great book, but the ending kind of sucked. I think that was really well done. But
the thing is, it's a good joke, but I think they did it way too many times.
I could see that,
like,
definitely.
They definitely... By, like, halfway in the movie, I think they did it way too many times. Like, 1 or 2 times is fine. And then on top of that, they even had a Stephen King cameo where he also says it. And I'm like, all right, I get it. Your ending sucks. We know this already. Move on, you know?
I think Stephen King saying it, that should have been kept in. But now that you say it, I do kind of agree. Like, yeah, it was kind of overplayed.
I think if they were going to use the joke anywhere, it should have been only for Stephen King's cameo, because that would have really sold it. But otherwise, I don't think it works the same. Because with Bill, you don't really feel it. You're like, okay, you're a writer, but, like, we just figured that out in the beginning of this movie. You know what I mean? It's not like Stephen King, an author who's been around for a long time. So, yeah, that was all right. Mike's role, I want to talk about Mike's role in The Ritual of Chud, which, again, I didn't read the books, but I kind of looked it up, and it's really weird, so I guess that's why they didn't go full, like, space turtle and tying of tongues, whatever it is, right? But I did like, they gave Mike something more to do in this movie, because I think they reversed the roles a little bit when they did the kids part, where Mike was the one that was telling them all about the history of the town, whereas in the movie it was Ben, who was like the new kid, which I guess didn't make sense when you really think about it.
I was going to say that. Like, it didn't make sense to me how in the first movie it was Ben who was so obsessed with the town's history, but now all of a sudden it's Mike who's obsessed with the town's history. And maybe if there was a moment like when, you know, Mike is talking about the town's history, but then Ben's like, oh, but wait a minute, you know, 27 some years ago, and I was looking into this town's history, I remember learning about this. Maybe if they had that, like, connecting moment, it would have made more sense, but it did seem weird that, like, Ben had nothing to offer when he literally spent, like, a whole summer in the town's library looking up the history.
And so that's the thing. I think they're trying to course correct because they knew they messed up in the first movie, making it Ben that knew the stuff when it was actually supposed to be Mike. And so that was awkward and kind of jarring. I mean, so since I knew in the book he was supposed to be there, I'm like, all right, this makes sense. But for someone who's just watching the movies, then you're like, wait, why are they switching up like Jasmynn said? And then the other thing is, I feel like the fact that the Ritual of Chud ended up being a dud, it ended up being a gazebo.
A gazebo.
A gazebo. Like, that was also a little disappointing because I thought, oh, okay, they're actually going to do it. And then it didn't work. And so I'm like, well, you just wasted so much of this movie because a lot of it is dedicated to them finding their little totems to do this ritual. It's so long. And I said that in my review that the middle part where they're doing their separate missions to find their stuff, it takes so long.
Very long.
And I almost forgot, what is this even about again? And then we finally get to the ritual, and then it turns out to be a dud. So it's like that whole thing was a waste. They could have cut it down so much because this movie felt really, really long.
Yeah, I remember going into the theater because we saw the movie together with a couple of friends.
Yeah.
And being like, oh yeah, like I don't know, what time am I going to get home? The movie's 3 hours long? Yeah, I think that definitely that middle part could have been cut down a lot. And like you said, for it to end up just being a gazebo like that kind of makes you think like, oh, so we watched that whole thing. But I do think I really liked seeing each one of them and like their little moments. I do think there was some merit to that parts, like for example, Beverly going back to like her childhood home and having that moment of like nostalgia. And we also got to see, was it Pennywise without makeup?
Yeah, now the thing is, that's another thing about Pennywise's origin. I'm not sure if that's actually where he started or if that's just an illusion to mess with Beverly. But go on.
Yeah, one thing that I definitely expected going in after seeing It Chapter 1 going into Chapter 2, I wanted to get a better understanding of Pennywise's origin story. And I feel like now after watching it, chapter 2, I just have more questions.
Yeah.
But that could have just been a smart play, and now they'll release a Pennywise origin movie, because I know I would immediately go see that.
They're talking about it, and I mean, again, if you read the books, you probably know all of this already, but again, because the movie, you can't fit all that information, that'd be way too much. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're already really pushing it with this one, because it was 3 hours. But I think, as I understand it, he's an alien that came from space. First, he was messing with these Native American people, and they thought they killed him off, or they stopped him with their ritual, but it was actually a trap, and they ended up all dying, I guess, or getting hurt, something. I don't think it really specified. And so then when it turns out to be a dud, I'm like, well, what was the point? Like, and then, again, the rituals thing, it seems more interesting in the books because it's just so weird. Mm-hmm. And the movie does get weird towards the end. You know, it turns into like a spider-clown hybrid thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like chasing them down. But after a while, you're like, okay, well, where else was this going? You know, if the ritual doesn't work, how are they going to do this?
Mm-hmm. I remember reading up somewhere, and I was telling Chris earlier that the reason why Pennywise is this, like, spider-clown hybrid is because when you think about it, spiders and clowns are the two things that kids fear the most. And that does make a lot of sense, and maybe if they go into, like, an origin story of Pennywise, they can talk more about why he is that clown-spider hybrid. But I think if I didn't know that, I would just kind of have this moment of, like, why does he have 8 legs? All of a sudden, that doesn't really make any sense. And again, they don't talk about in It Chapter 2 how he is this alien from a space.
Well, they do. They hint at it that he came from space, because if you look at the little drawings on that little totem thing that Mike had, there's like a star thing and a little trail coming down. So I think they did hint at him. And even in the first one, they hinted at him being an alien, because like you saw his mouth like open up and all weird. So like you kind of could tell he was an alien, not a supernatural creature, maybe.
I guess, but I feel like, because again, I had a lot of context going into seeing It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, and I mean, I guess maybe a lot of people did, you know, read up on, like, you know, the book before, and, like, they watched the original movie, but I don't know, I feel like, again, they could have maybe been more obvious with that, but maybe that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and also I think it's obvious that he's a shapeshifter, right? And so I was confused, and I thought when they had the scene in the house of the old lady, right, and they showed a picture of him looking like an old-timey clown person, right? I was wondering if that was because maybe he saw somebody when he came down as an alien, right? Before he actually took on an actual form, right? And he was just running around as a monster. If he maybe went to like a circus or something and saw a guy and like, you know what? That's what I want to do. And then like Jasmynn said, like, it's because it's a scary thing. Or he's like, oh, I see how it scares people. So maybe that's what I want to be. And then he like based his form off this other guy. I'm wondering that. And maybe, again, if they do an origin story, then maybe they can do that. Mm-hmm. But it was still kind of unclear, and like they wanted to go more detail to it. I think they wanted to talk more about it, but like they just ran out of time, which they could have had if they cut down the whole middle part. But it is what it is. And then I had a note here about the flashbacks. I think we were talking about that. Like in the mission part, you do see certain flashbacks that are talking about what the kids were going through when they divided, like when they separated after they got in a fight in the first movie, right? And you see them separate, and they have these flashbacks. And with these flashbacks, they do add a little more context, a little more about what these kids are going through, their fears, whatever. But some of those sequences ran a little long. The scare scenes, like, they were cool in some parts, but other times it was just, like, something going on and on and on. And that happened towards the end, too, where they were all separated and having their own scare sequence where they're trying to, like, get away from Pennywise, whatever he's doing. And it just keeps going and going and going. And, like, they're about to fight him, and then something else happens, and he separates them again, and they have to fight through something. You know, that part kind of got a little long, too. They probably could have cut some of those out.
One question I had for you, if you remember. So, at the very end of It Chapter 2, when they're, like, you know, calling Pennywise these names, like, you're a clown, this, that, and the other, was that in the first movie?
Oh, yeah, that was nothing we were going to talk about. The ending, yeah. This idea that if they aren't scared of Pennywise and they show that they aren't afraid and they, like, take him head on, that he starts to lose his power and they can, like, kill him easily, right? Which, again, I think it is what they did in the first movie, which also is the same idea about when Eddie had the spear. It's like, because he believed it would work, it worked. So, like, when, I think it was Bill that had the little bullet gun thing, or the nail gun from Mike's farm, and shot him in the head, that worked because they believed it would work and they weren't afraid of him anymore. So for them to do that again, like, well, if it works twice, then why didn't it just completely finish him off the first time? You know what I mean? Why was he able to come back this time, but the first time, or this time he wasn't able to come back, like, because they, like, ripped his heart out or whatever, but they didn't do that from the very beginning. He just disappeared and then came back again. Like, that part was weird. I think So that's why I'm also wishing that the ritual was actually a real thing, because that would give that more weight, and you'd feel like, okay, this is definitely it. He's not coming back. But the other time, it wasn't as clear, or like, I feel like I would have expected, how do I put this? The ritual would have made more sense to me than just doing the same thing they did in the first movie and then adding in the part where they ripped out his heart and like crushed it.
That makes sense, yeah. Because then again, if the ritual had worked like you said before, it wouldn't have felt like that middle part that took so long was a big waste. Because again, it was just a gazebo.
And but for the record, we know it's placebo. We're just mocking Eddie, because that was the thing he said in the first movie.
One thing that I remember we both said caught us off guard was the part where Beverly and Bill like kissed in the movie. Yeah. And I mean, yes, they're both married, but like Beverly's husband, we don't care about him. He was not a good character. But Bill definitely had a wife, and we're sitting here like, are you married? What the heck?
Yeah, that's true. The whole love triangle between Bill, Ben, and Beverly, that which was already in the first movie too, and when they brought it back, I mean, it kind of worked, but it was weird because Ben, one, I think would have been, because they didn't even remember it, because the whole thing was that their memories are lost, right? But I feel like they would have remembered like having feelings for each other, or like Ben would have remembered writing that letter, because I don't think it was directly connected to like Pennywise, for example. It wasn't like a scare, it was just a normal childhood memory. So I'm like,
I thought he did remember writing the letter, because he kept like even her yearbook signature in his wallet for all those years.
But then why didn't he say anything the whole time when she was like making moves on Bill? And she's like, you're wrong.
I remember him as a child? He was so shy.
I mean, yeah, but now he's a big, hunky adult, you know what I mean? Like
But remember, he still has the heart of the little fat kid.
I mean, I guess.
He still has the confidence.
He's like isn't he like a
kid.
CEO or something of an architecture company or whatever? Like, he's got...
But you can still have a glow up as amazing as Ben, but you're still going to feel... Like what Pennywise, he brought those fears back onto him. Like, oh, you're still just going to be that little fat kid that no one cares about. Because that's one of his deepest fears, that he can be super buff and be this big CEO person, but deep down, he's just always going to feel that like a little unconfident kid.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still the love triangle. I was kind of on the fence about. Like, I definitely felt for him. I felt like, wow, that sucks to see him. See, like, we're clearly the person that wrote this letter, but she's going for some other guy who was obviously not the person. But I don't know. I think also the love triangle was a little iffy in the first movie too.
That's true.
I think it was more in the first movie, but this one also was still a little iffy. But I think the resolution worked for me. So ultimately, it wasn't one of the things that stood out to me. It was just something that was a part of it,
I'm just glad that they ended up together. So that's what everyone wanted. They wanted them to end up together, and I'm glad that she's not with someone who's trash, because Beverly's been through a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, they all have, but...
Oh, yeah. So that's it, chapter 2. I think... Again, not as good as the first, but definitely worth seeing if you liked the original or you like the book, whatever. Definitely check that out.
And I definitely do think that we should get a Pennywise origin story, because I know I have a lot of questions right now that I would like to have answered, and I don't feel like reading the book.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think they said they were considering it, and Bill Skarsgård said he was down, so maybe we'll see it in a few years. But if not, I think... I'm satisfied enough that I don't need another one, but it would be cool to have it. So we'll see. Because again, there's like the Conjuring universe where they just keep adding these extra movies that aren't really necessary. So I don't want it to end up like that. So if it's better to just leave it as is, then I say just leave it. Don't try and make a Pennywise movie if it's not going to work. Don't do it. All right. So don't forget to like this video, share, subscribe. Also follow her on Instagram, Art by Jasmynn. I'll put it like right here, I guess. And check out her work. It's great. And I will see you in the next one.
Goodbye.